Alright, so this is not going to be a crazy in-depth video. There's a lot of background noise. I apologize for that. It's been raining here in California for once, so... And many people in my house are watching TVs. But here I have my first Limited Remake glove. And this is a Joe D Mack Deluxe Remake glove. So this is made by the guy who made it for the movies. And as you can see, there's quite a bit of difference between the two. And there's a few reasons for that. One of them is, I know that Joe had said that he didn't want to make accurate replicas because he didn't want to diminish the value of the screen use gloves, which is kind of ridiculous when you're making a deluxe, at the time, $1,000 replica. And why make replicas if you didn't want to make them accurate? But there's a few very weird things on this glove that I will show you comparisons of with my glove. One of which is that the cuff is massive. Like, it's insane. I can stick my hand in there, no problem. It can fall off my hand, no problem. It's really large. And you can see in pictures of the glove being worn that it is much more snug, like this one is, where you do have to open it to put it on. The templates, I believe, are exactly the same as the standard glove that he offered, minus the cuff being thinner. The blade shapes are very interesting and much larger than they look in pictures and in measurements that I have. Where mine are probably about 1/8 of an inch smaller on each blade and a little less tall towards the ends. See how high that is? This is going to be a weird video because I'm going to be picking up and sitting both of these down a lot. But as you can see, if it's focusing, these aren't as thick looking. They're a little bit shorter, more proportionate to the tips. His stall strip placement is very off. It seems like they're all placed basically in a straight line and not accurately, which has the middle being raised up, the index far down, the ring really far down to where it hangs off the edge, and the pinky, which is slightly higher up than the ring. Now, the area that is probably the weirdest and the most inaccurate would be the stalls, the internal shapes of them, and then these parts of the tips. The tips are very short, hilariously short, which I think is accurate to some of the remakes, but not all of them, at least as far as I can tell. And when these are fully extended, it leaves very large gaps in between the stalls and tips, except for the pinky. Where, with mine, and what I can see on the particular screen use glove that I'm replicating, it doesn't do that. Only the ring finger does that, the index almost does it, and the middle almost does, like a tiniest bit. And then the pinky doesn't, of course. And then another interesting thing is the inside of the stalls. You can see each of these connecting pieces is very narrow. It looks like he just traced this part the same and then adjusted the flats, which, yeah, that's what it seems like. Where there are behind the scenes pictures where you can see the stalls without the tips attached, and they have shapes much similar to this. I would say pretty damn close to this. His tip shapes are definitely off, but there's not too much to really complain about. It's just sort of a sizing thing. There are differences, but I mean, it can be summed up with that. The caps and the hinge are lathed, and as you can see, this glove doesn't really fit. But the caps and the hinge are lathed. The caps are all one piece, like my prototype gloves, but now it's different, but they are lathed on my actual limited gloves. But the hinge looks atrocious. He seemed to have given each individual segment a chamfer, which is that kind of rounded off bit on the edges. And they don't seem to line up properly either. They're all angled and in different places than they should be. Where with mine, they seem to line up pretty well, because that's how I brazed them. I brazed them all while they were connected to each other. Obviously, since I'm pulling on it, it's pulling the hinge, but they seem to line up well enough, and they're all, I don't know what to refer to that as. They all have sharp edges. Not actually sharp, but you know, they're not chamfered at all. Another difference being, obviously, this glove doesn't have the hole there. But there were two gloves, one that looked exactly like this, basically, save for a few details, that didn't have the hole. So I imagine that that's what he was replicating with this. Another thing is these welds are really interesting, and not that they look bad, but that they are kind of functionally bad. There's only a few spots on each blade where the weld actually took to the copper. I'm not sure how well it'll pick up, but on the middle blade especially, you can see light. There you go. You can see light coming through it, through most of the blade, and it's only really held on here and back here. If you had told me that this glove was made by another builder, just some random builder, I'd say it's a pretty good representation of a remake. Like, it's not perfect, obviously, by any means, but it's pretty good. Now, if you were telling me that this was a $1,000 deluxe glove made by the builder of the original remake glove, I would say this is hot garbage. Like, I hate to say it like that, but there's very clearly something wrong with it. And that's without even talking about the leather. I do not know what is going on here. It had a elastic band at some point, I guess. None of it was sewn, which is fine, but the fingers were cut very shortly. So you can see they go to there. And when I actually put the glove on, which takes a second. When I actually put the glove on, there's a ton of space between my fingers and those caps. Which isn't right. They should come up to almost exactly here. Another small thing that's weird that I didn't think of, but not all of these edges are straight, which they should be because they were done on a lathe. But some of them are really not, I don't want to say jagged, but they have like wavy bits. I'm not really sure why. They should have the lathe lines, which they do, and the tips do, but it shouldn't be not straight? Jagged? I don't know. These two are about the same size. Mine is maybe a little bit longer, mostly because of the stall positioning. But mine is maybe a little bit longer, like 1/8 of an inch, probably. My blades are all around shorter than his, and smaller. My stalls are tiniest bit longer, but most of the length is in material after the rivet or into the tip, where his, it has these huge gaps, so it looks shorter. So his pinky is longer though, which is really strange. But you can really see a lot of the differences, as well as the weathering on these. Something that I noticed on this glove, this is going to be a long video by the way, is that on this middle stall, I don't know if I'll be able to get it to focus, around the rivet, you can see it's slightly melted, which tells me that that rivet was just another contact point when he was welding this. So I believe that he welded the blades on while the stalls and the tips were attached to each other, which is really strange. Now, I'm going to be making a bunch of adjustments to this after I'm done. I'm not going to remove material, just, you know, fix bends, make it actually fit my hand. But I wanted to get a video out for you guys. I want to get a bunch of pictures out as well of them side by side. Oh yeah, and he signed his name on the outside of the cuff, which is really strange. I don't know why you wouldn't do it on the inside. And then, another thing, I keep trying to close up the video, but then I think of another thing. The blades have this weird texture on top. I think he cut these with like a plasma torch or something. I'm not entirely sure. Where you can see he did the sort of grain effect on the blade itself, but he didn't do it on the top, which is clearly there in pictures that I have, at least of this glove. You can see it on the blades as well. And then some of his rivets are weathered, some aren't. Mine are all unweathered, but I can change that on customer request, really. But yeah, I wanted to show you guys the difference between these two gloves. Unfortunately, I don't have a leather to show an example of the difference between that, but that sucks. I had actually had Andrew, the guy who was selling the remakes for Joe D Mack, him and Joe D Mack messaged me and asked me what leathers I use because the leathers they used sucked. So, and I don't mean that towards them at all, you know, finding a good leather sucks, but it is notable that they asked if I could, you know, tell them about what I use. So, I think that's it. There's a bunch of other small things, like the patterns on this, random, but, you know, I didn't expect them to recreate every hammer mark like I'm trying to do. It sucks. Yeah, I think that's it. Let me know what you guys think about the differences between these two gloves. And I hope you like the video, because it is a long one.